The Wilshire Shopping Center that served the San Fernando Valley for 47 years just shuttered its doors forever, not because of online competition, not because customers stopped coming. The regional manager said it himself, and I quote, "The supply chain costs became mathematically impossible to sustain." Translation: the entire system is breaking down and nobody wants to admit it. I'm Elizabeth Carter, and for the past 6 months, I've been investigating something the mainstream media won't touch, something that goes way deeper than individual store closures or changing consumer habits. Before you hear another sanitized explanation from corporate spokespeople or another politician deflecting responsibility, you need to see the documents I've obtained. You need to hear the recordings. You need to understand what's really happening to the economic foundation of this country. But first, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications. The algorithms are already trying to bury this investigation, and I need you to see what's coming next. I'm not funded by corporate sponsors or political parties. I follow the evidence wherever it leads, and what I've found will change how you see every empty storefront in your neighborhood. Here's what they're not telling you. The Wilshire closure isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a cascading infrastructure breakdown that's been accelerating for 18 months, and the people who could stop it are choosing not to act. This isn't about politics. It's about math, cold, hard mathematics that prove our retail ecosystem is collapsing in real time. Let me show you the numbers they don't want you to see. In the last 8 months, over 14,000 retail locations have closed permanently across the United States. Not downsized, not relocated, closed forever. These aren't just big box stores or department stores everyone keeps talking about. These are grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations, banks, the essential infrastructure that keeps communities functioning. But here's where it gets interesting. When I started mapping these closures, I noticed something the industry reports aren't mentioning. They're not random. They're not spread evenly across economic demographics or geographic regions. There's a pattern, a very specific pattern that reveals exactly what's driving this crisis. The corporate executives I've interviewed all use the same language: supply chain disruption, labor shortages, changing consumer preferences, market forces, regulatory burden. It's like they're reading from the same script, and in many cases, they literally are. I've obtained internal communications that show these talking points are coordinated across multiple industry associations. Translation: they know exactly what's causing the closures, and they're deliberately obscuring the real cause because it implicates decisions made at the highest levels of government and corporate leadership. Think about that for a moment. Let that sink in. We're watching the systematic dismantling of local commerce across America, and the people responsible are actively lying about why it's happening. The Wilshire Shopping Center housed 17 businesses, a grocery store that employed 43 people, a pharmacy that filled prescriptions for elderly residents who don't drive, a bank branch that processed small business deposits, a dry cleaner that had served the same families for 2 decades, all gone overnight. Maria Gonzalez managed that grocery store for 8 years. She watched the supply costs double, then triple. She watched delivery schedules become unpredictable. She watched wholesale prices fluctuate wildly from week to week. She filed reports with corporate headquarters documenting every problem, every cost increase, every logistical breakdown. Those reports were ignored until the day corporate called to tell her the store was closing in 30 days. That is what I call economic warfare disguised as market forces. But Maria's store isn't alone. In the last 6 months, over 2,000 grocery stores have closed in communities with populations under 50,000, communities where that grocery store wasn't just a business. It was the economic anchor that kept other businesses viable. It was the place where neighbors saw each other. It was the employer that provided entry-level jobs and management opportunities for local residents. The domino effect is already starting. When the grocery store closes, foot traffic disappears. When foot traffic disappears, the coffee shop, the hardware store, the hair salon, they all become financially unsustainable. Within 18 months, you're looking at complete commercial district collapse. And here's what nobody's talking about. This pattern isn't accidental. The mathematical precision of this breakdown suggests deliberate policy decisions designed to concentrate retail power in the hands of a very small number of corporate entities. The question isn't whether this is happening. The question is who benefits when local retail infrastructure gets destroyed. That's what I'm going to show you in this investigation. The documents, the recordings, The government officials who refuse to return phone calls, the corporate executives who suddenly develop selective amnesia when asked direct questions about their decision-making process. I'm going to show you exactly how the system that once supported local businesses and community economic independence is being systematically dismantled, and I'm going to show you who's making money while your neighborhood dies. But there's something they're not telling you about what comes next. Something that makes the Wilshire closure look like a minor inconvenience compared to what's planned for the next 12 months. Stay with me. The Wilshire Shopping Center is not alone. In the last 8 months, 14,736 retail locations have closed permanently. That's according to the Commercial Real Estate Database, which tracks every business closure that affects more than 10 employees. 14,736 in 8 months. But here's what the database doesn't tell you. I mapped every single one of those closures by geographic location, by community income level, by population density. What I found will shock you. 87% of these closures are concentrated in communities with median household incomes below $60,000. 93% are in towns with populations under 75,000. These aren't random market forces. This is systematic targeting of economically vulnerable communities. Dr. Patricia Williams from the Supply Chain Research Institute at Georgetown has been tracking retail infrastructure for 12 years. She predicted this exact scenario in a report published 18 months ago, a report that was sent to every major retailer, every relevant government agency, and every industry trade association. Her conclusion was crystal clear. Current logistics cost structures will make small and mid-size retail operations mathematically impossible within 2 years. That report was ignored by everyone who received it. Dr. Williams told me, and I quote, "The cost increases we documented were not market-driven. They were policy-driven. Specific regulatory changes and infrastructure investment priorities that made retail distribution exponentially more expensive for operators serving smaller markets." Translation: government decisions created this crisis. Corporate decisions accelerated it. And now both sides are pretending it's natural market evolution. Let me show you the domino chain that's destroying retail America. First domino: transportation fuel costs increased 43% between March and November due to pipeline restrictions and refinery capacity reductions. Second domino: commercial insurance rates for retail operations increased 67% due to new liability requirements and crime rate calculations. Third domino: commercial rent increased an average of 34% nationwide as property owners passed increased municipal tax burdens directly to tenants. Any one of these increases would stress retail operations. All three simultaneously make most retail businesses unsustainable overnight. But when I contacted the Department of Commerce about these statistics, here's what spokesman Bradley Morrison told me. Retail sector adjustments reflect normal economic evolution as consumer preferences shift toward digital platforms and larger format shopping experiences. Translation: we're not going to acknowledge that our policies destroyed local businesses, so we'll pretend this was inevitable technological progress. When I contacted the Small Business Administration, I was told that Director Sarah Chen was unavailable for comment and that my questions should be submitted in writing through official channels. 3 weeks later, I received a form letter stating that current retail trends are within normal economic variation parameters. Translation: we're going to ignore this until the media attention goes away. The corporate responses are equally revealing. I contacted 18 major retail chains that have announced closures in the past 6 months. 17 declined to provide executives for on-record interviews. The one company that agreed to speak sent me their director of corporate communications, Jennifer Walsh from Midwest Retail Group. Walsh told me, "Our store optimization strategy reflects data-driven decisions to better serve customers through enhanced digital integration and strategic location consolidation." Translation: we're closing stores in poor communities because they're not profitable enough, but we're going to pretend this benefits customers somehow. When I asked Walsh specifically about the supply chain cost increases that her own company's financial reports cite as the primary driver of closures, she said, "Various operational factors contribute to location-specific performance metrics that inform our strategic positioning decisions." Translation: yes, costs increased dramatically, but we're not going to admit that because it would implicate the policy decisions that caused those cost increases. This isn't about politics, it's about math. When transportation costs increase 43%, insurance costs increase 67%, and rent costs increase 34%, all within the same 8-month period, small and medium retail operations cannot survive. Period. The mathematics are undeniable. A grocery store operating on 3% profit margins cannot absorb a 40% increase in operational costs. A pharmacy operating on 7% margins cannot absorb a 60% increase in insurance costs. A family-owned hardware store cannot absorb a 30% increase in rent, while wholesale prices fluctuate wildly due to supply chain disruptions. But here's the truly infuriating part. These cost increases weren't accidental. They weren't natural market forces. They were the predictable result of specific policy decisions made by people who had access to exactly the kind of analysis Dr. Williams provided. They knew this would happen. They chose to do it anyway. The irony is staggering. The same politicians who campaign on supporting small business and local communities implemented the exact policies that make small business mathematically impossible. The Infrastructure Investment Act that was supposed to help rural communities included regulatory changes that increased transportation costs for exactly those communities. The Community Safety Enhancement Act that was supposed to reduce crime in urban areas included insurance requirements that made urban retail operations financially unsustainable. Every policy intended to help ended up causing precisely the opposite effect. And the retail executives who are closing these stores? They're not victims of market forces. They're making calculated decisions to abandon communities that no longer generate sufficient profit margins. They could absorb these cost increases by reducing executive compensation or shareholder returns. They're choosing not to. Let that sink in. 14,736 businesses closed, hundreds of thousands of jobs eliminated, entire communities stripped of essential services, not because it was economically necessary, because it wasn't profitable enough for corporate executives and shareholders who are already making record profits from their remaining operations. But there's something else happening here. Something that makes this retail apocalypse look like just the opening act of a much larger economic transformation. Something that involves specific individuals who are profiting enormously while entire communities lose access to basic goods and services. I'm going to show you exactly who benefits when local retail infrastructure gets destroyed, and I'm going to show you the human cost of their profit calculations. Behind every statistic is a human face. Behind every closure is a family whose world just got turned upside down. Let me introduce you to 3 people whose stories reveal the true cost of this retail apocalypse. Robert Chen owns Chen's Hardware in Millfield, Ohio. His grandfather opened that store in 1967. His father expanded it in 1989. Robert took over in 2018, thinking he was inheriting a stable family business that would support his own children someday. Last month, he locked the doors for the final time. Robert's not what you'd call emotional. He's practical, methodical. When he talks about losing the store, his voice stays steady. But when he describes walking through those empty aisles one last time, removing the handwritten price tags his grandfather created 50 years ago, you can see something break behind his eyes. Chen's Hardware wasn't killed by Home Depot or Amazon. Those competitors existed when Robert's father successfully ran the business for 30 years. What killed Chen's Hardware was the mathematics. Wholesale costs that doubled overnight, insurance premiums that tripled, a commercial rent increase of $800 per month with 30 days notice. Robert showed me his ledgers. Every month for 18 months, the numbers got worse. Not because customers stopped coming. They kept coming. They needed what he sold. They wanted to buy local. They paid cash and thanked him for being there. But customer loyalty doesn't overcome impossible mathematics. The day Robert closed Chen's Hardware, 11 people lost their jobs. Not just Robert. Margaret Foster, who managed the paint counter for 14 years. James Rodriguez, who knew every bolt and screw in the inventory. Sandra Walsh, who helped customers design their home improvement projects and often stayed late to make sure they had everything they needed. These weren't minimum wage positions. These were skilled retail jobs that paid living wages and provided health insurance. Margaret was supporting her elderly mother. James was saving for his daughter's college tuition. Sandra was the primary breadwinner for her family while her husband recovered from cancer treatment. All of them gone, not because the business failed, because the system was designed to make their jobs mathematically impossible. 300 miles south, Patricia Williams managed the Riverside Pharmacy in Carterville, Kentucky for 9 years. Not the chain pharmacy at the shopping center, the independent pharmacy downtown that filled prescriptions for people who couldn't drive to the big stores, the pharmacy that delivered medications to housebound seniors, the pharmacy that worked with customers on payment plans when insurance didn't cover everything. Patricia watched her supply costs become completely unpredictable. Blood pressure medication that cost $18 wholesale one week would cost $34 the next week, with no explanation from distributors. Insulin prices fluctuated by 40% month to month. Generic medications became harder to obtain, with delivery schedules that shifted constantly. But the final blow came when Patricia's commercial insurance carrier informed her that pharmacy operations in communities under 20,000 population were now classified as high-risk ventures. Her liability premium increased from $1,400 monthly to $4,200 monthly. Overnight, no negotiation, no appeal process. Patricia tried everything. She contacted pharmaceutical distributors about cost stabilization programs. She applied for small business assistance grants. She reached out to state pharmacy associations for guidance. Every door led to the same dead end: pay the increased costs or close the pharmacy. Riverside Pharmacy closed on a Tuesday morning in November. Patricia had to call 37 customers personally to tell them they'd need to find somewhere else to fill their prescriptions. Customers like Dorothy Hamilton, 83 years old, no car, living on Social Security. Dorothy's closest pharmacy option is now 16 miles away. She depends on her nephew to drive her, but he works construction and can't always get time off during pharmacy hours. That is what I call systematic healthcare abandonment disguised as market forces. 200 miles west, Marcus Johnson spent 8 years building his restaurant supply business in Fairmont, Indiana. Johnson Food Service supplied ingredients to 12 local restaurants, 3 school districts, and the county hospital cafeteria. Marcus wasn't trying to compete with national distributors. He was serving customers those big companies ignored because the order volumes were too small to be profitable. Marcus knew every restaurant owner personally. He understood their menus, their seasonal needs, their budget constraints. When the pandemic hit, Marcus helped his customers navigate supply shortages and price fluctuations. He extended credit when restaurants struggled. He sourced specialty items that national distributors wouldn't carry. He was exactly the kind of local business owner that politicians love to celebrate in campaign speeches. Then the transportation costs hit. Marcus's fuel expenses increased from $1,800 monthly to $4,000 monthly. His commercial vehicle insurance doubled. The refrigerated truck he needed to replace cost $38,000 more than the same model cost 2 years earlier. Marcus ran the numbers every possible way: reduced routes, increased minimum orders, passed costs to customers, cut his own salary to zero. Nothing worked. The mathematics were unforgiving. Johnson Food Service closed in September. 12 restaurants lost their primary supplier. The school district scrambled to find new vendors who could meet their nutritional requirements and budget constraints. The hospital cafeteria had to eliminate several menu options because they couldn't source ingredients locally anymore. Marcus is 41 years old. He's been in food service his entire adult life. He's looking for work in a job market where his specific skills and local relationships mean nothing to corporate hiring managers who've never heard of Fairmont, Indiana. But here's what connects Robert and Patricia and Marcus. None of them failed because they were bad business owners. None of them failed because customers didn't need their services. They all failed because the cost structure they operated within was systematically altered to benefit large corporations at the expense of local independent operators. Robert's customers still need hardware supplies. They're now driving 23 miles to a big box store where they get less knowledgeable service at higher prices. Patricia's customers still need prescriptions filled. They're now traveling significant distances and often waiting longer for medications they need immediately. Marcus's restaurant customers still need food supplies. They're now paying higher prices for lower quality ingredients from national distributors who don't understand local preferences. Everyone loses except the corporations that engineered this consolidation. Think about that. Every person who shopped at Chen's Hardware is worse off. Every patient who relied on Riverside Pharmacy is worse off. Every restaurant that bought from Johnson Food Service is worse off. The only winners are the massive corporations that eliminated their local competition through systematic cost manipulation. If you've watched local businesses disappear in your community, if you've seen empty storefronts where thriving shops used to serve your neighbors, I want you to hit that like button right now, because this isn't happening by accident. And the people responsible are counting on you not connecting these dots, but the personal stories are just the beginning. The real revelation is who benefits when hardworking people like Robert and Patricia and Marcus get systematically eliminated from the economy. And that's what I'm going to show you next. Now let me show you the machine behind the suffering, the systematic forces that destroyed Robert's hardware store, Patricia's pharmacy, and Marcus's food service business. This isn't random market evolution. This is engineered economic consolidation. The supply chain breakdowns didn't happen by accident. 3 major logistics companies control 67% of retail distribution in the United States: Mega Logistics Corp, National Supply Systems, and Transglobal Distribution. In March 2024, all 3 companies simultaneously implemented new pricing structures that doubled transportation costs for shipments under $50,000. Think about that, simultaneously. 3 competing companies, identical pricing changes on the exact same date. When I contacted Mega Logistics Corp about this coordination, their spokesman told me pricing adjustments reflect current market conditions and operational cost analysis conducted independently by our strategic planning division. Translation: we coordinated with our competitors to eliminate small customers, but we're going to pretend it was coincidental. The financial mechanism is brutally simple. Small retailers like Robert Chen typically order inventory worth $15,000 to $30,000 per shipment. Under the new pricing structure, his transportation costs increased from 4% of inventory cost to 11% of inventory cost overnight. Large retailers like Home Depot order inventory worth $5 to $8 million per shipment. Their transportation cost per unit actually decreased under the new pricing structure. This wasn't market forces. This was deliberate policy designed to make small retail mathematically impossible while making large retail more profitable. But the logistics coordination was just the first step. The commercial real estate sector implemented parallel changes that crushed small retailers from another direction. Commercial Property Management Association guidelines now recommend rent increases of 30 to 40% for retail spaces under 5,000 square feet, based on new risk assessment models that classify small retail operations as unstable tenants. Patricia Williams faced exactly this scenario. Her pharmacy lease renewal included a 38% rent increase with no negotiation options. When I examined similar lease renewals across 12 different states, I found identical percentage increases and identical non-negotiable language. Property management companies are using standardized templates designed to eliminate small retail tenants. Meanwhile, large retail chains are securing long-term leases with built-in rent stabilization clauses and expansion options. The same property management companies that are pricing out small retailers are offering corporate chains rental terms that haven't been available to independent operators in over a decade. The insurance industry completed the 3rd phase of this consolidation strategy. New liability assessment protocols classify retail operations serving populations under 50,000 as high-risk ventures requiring premium increases of 60 to 90%. But retail operations serving larger populations receive risk reduction credits that actually lower their insurance costs. Marcus Johnson's experience proves this pattern. His commercial vehicle insurance doubled based on new rural route risk calculations. But national food distributors operating the same routes receive volume discounts that reduce their per-vehicle insurance costs by 23%. Every sector simultaneously: transportation, real estate, insurance.